Okay, we've been talking a lot about quadratic expressions, but now we're going to move into the realm of quadratic equations and how we sort of deal with equations. At start, I want to look at some simple equations. So let's just look at x plus 2. In the case of x plus 2 equals 0, we know that we can subtract 2 from both sides and get that x equals negative 2. Likewise, x plus 3 equals 0. Subtract 3 from both sides. X equals negative 3. Easy equations to solve. Also, we have a multiplication rule dealing with 0. We know that 0 times anything equals 0. So both of those cases are true. Okay. So we're going to be combining these two rules to start solving quadratic equations. But let's just look at a pair of binomials. Let's say we had x plus 3 times x plus 2, and we set that equal to 0. The question I would ask you is what values of x and what values of x would make this true? Well, what we want to do, just like I showed you up here, we want to make each one of these equal to 0 in its own right. So, for instance, if we go back to this here, we know that x plus 2 equals 0 means x equals negative 2, or x plus 3 to be equal to 0, x has to equal negative 3. If that's true, and I want to set these binomials equal to 0, I can either do negative 3 plus 3 times negative 3 plus 2, and that gives me 0 times negative 1, which is 0, so that works out. So x could equal negative 3, or negative 2 plus 3 times negative 2 plus 2. Does that equal 0? Well, 1 times 0 equals 0. Yeah. So the other option is x equals negative 2. So for these two binomials here, for this equation to be true, we know that x has to equal either negative 3 or negative 2. Let me show you a little bit more about what I mean. This time, let's start off with a whole trinomial. Something like x squared plus 6x plus 5. And we're going to set that equal to 0. Now initially I don't know what the answer is. This isn't like those other equations where it's really simple and I can look at this and say, oh, x is blank. So the first thing I have to do is factor it out to its binomials. So what I do is I list the kind of numbers that can multiply to 5, in this case only 1 and 5. And I see, all right, do those add to 6? They do. So I know my binomials are x plus 1 and x plus 5. And that's equal to 0. Now what I want to do is set each one of these binomials equal to 0 to figure out how I could make the whole thing equal 0, thus setting the equation equal to 0. So if that's the case, I have to solve x plus 1 equals 0, and I have to solve x plus 5 equals 0. For x plus 1 equals 0, x must equal negative 1. For x plus 5 equals 0, x must equal negative 5. So x can either equal negative 1 or negative 5, and that will solve this equation. So the solutions to this trinomial, this equation here, are negative 1 and negative 5. Let's try one more. X squared plus 7x equals 0. Now this is just a binomial. It's a quadratic binomial, but we can still factor it because there's a common factor here. The common factor is x. So we can rewrite this as x times x plus 7 equals 0. Well, now to make x equal to 0, it's easy. You just set it equal to 0. So x equals 0 is one of the options. But how do we make x plus 7 equal to 0? We plug in negative 7. So the other option is negative 7. and those are the two solutions to this equation. So for a lot of this, you're going to be finding two solutions, and you're going to do it by first factoring and then setting each one of the binomials or each one of the factors equal to 0, and those will be your solutions.